Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I decided to do the 8 values quiz. Let's begin. Oppression by corporations is as much, if not more, of a concern than oppression by governments. From my study of economics and a bit of a personal viewpoint, I think that the goal of the government is in general to please any member, or not to please, but at least provide for any member who falls into their country. Corporation, on the other hand, cares only about anyone who is within itself. And even within the corporation, it only cares for those who are really better. The competition is really high. If a person will fail in a corporation, they most likely will face repercussions. Whereas in a government, if you do not contribute to the government completely, you can still very much be a part of the country. Government, I believe, can control government, I believe, can control the state much better than a corporation, because a government will give a chance and a possibility to every citizen regardless, whereas a corporation will look for quality. While looking for quality is generally a good thing, it kind of leaves a very big part of the population without a chance. So I'm going to agree that oppression by corporations is worse than oppression by governments. It is necessary for the government to intervene in the economy to protect citizens. Well, the problem is that you have government control markets and free markets. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. So I don't think I will agree or disagree. I am neutral on this one. The freer the markets, the freer the people. I completely disagree with this statement. I disagree with it because free market, aka market controlled by firms, does not equate for free people. If anything, it means that the firms totally control the market for their own benefits, and the benefit of a firm or an individual does not equate to free people. So strongly disagree. I mean, anything that related to market, be it government control or free market, doesn't equate to the people freedom. Publicly funded research is more beneficial to the people than leaving it to the market. Oh, well, that's an interesting one, because if you publicly fund, you give equal opportunity, theoretically, to everyone. And when you have a firm funding, you give, technically speaking, more money, but to less individuals. That's an interesting one. Well, I'm going to go by this logic. I have said that the firm chooses quality over quantity, whereas a government chooses quantity over quality. For the advancement of society, we need quality that goes translated then into quantity. So as such, it first needs to have a large amount of money invested. And as such, a firm is a perfect idea to invest money, because they will invest in less individuals with more resources, and as such, higher probability of results. So I'm going to say that I'm disagreeing. From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. Oh, that's an interesting one. I agree with the first part. I think that if you work good, you deserve good. If you work better, you deserve better. If you work bad, you deserve bad. However, according to his needs, the needs are always changing. The more you get, the more you want. The less you get, the more you want to get it back. And once you get it, you want to get more. So what exactly is what are we going to look at the needs from? Are we going to look at the basic necessity goods? Well, necessity goods are just there to keep people alive, as the name suggests. It's not what you need. You need to, well, sustain yourself, be able to work, etc. And once you work, you get your goals. And once you achieve your goals, you move on further. So I am going to agree with the first part, but I'm going to disagree with the second. I'm just going to say agree. It would be best if social programs were abolished in favor of private charity. Oh, it's the same argument that we had before. Social programs would go for quality over quantity, and private goes for quality over quantity. Well, in this particular case, however, I would say that the more people are sustained, the better it is for the civilization, because higher the populace. On the other hand, if you have a private charity, then you will donate to less people, in theory, of course, but much more money will go, which means that the charity donated will be made more efficient. But in my understanding of best is that the more people get to it, so social programs are going to be much better. So I'm going to disagree. Taxes should be increased on the rich to provide for the poor. So it's the argument of or to each according to his own needs. So you provide for the poor to sustain their needs. Here's a bit of a question though. If the poor cannot climb out of poverty even though you cut the taxes and you already provide for them, would it really make sense to tax the rich even more? After all, the rich working really hard. They earn their well-deserved money, and you can argue all you want that they are rich. The brilliant thing is, if I earned $10 or $100, I would consider them to be earned in both instances. So I don't think you should tax the rich to provide for the poor. You should make sure that your government provides for the poor, set up better education, and provide general public charity rather than go to private. So I'm going to disagree. Inheritance and capital gains are legitimate forms of wealth. I think so. I see no point to debate over here. If I so desire to pass my wealth to someone else, be it relatives or other people, it is completely acceptable and legal. I see no problem with it whatsoever. Public utilities like roads and electricity should be publicly owned. Funny, because I can think you can own a road privately. You can have a private territory, you can have private electricity even, especially with the new solar panels where you can make your own electricity that and sell it to the government. That's private electricity. So public utility like roads, not really anymore. But in general though, it goes to the same argument of the firm. A firm wishes to provide mainly for itself. So it will build a road for itself and its workers. Whereas a government provides for everyone in the state, regardless of whether they are supporting the current government or not. They are all citizens and they deserve it because they are citizens. So I think that the public's utilities must be publicly owned because as such they increase the total utility for the whole country and as such more people can benefit from it. Those with a greater ability to pay should receive better healthcare. I strongly agree. It goes back to the argument to each based on his qualities or something. When the better you do, the better you get. So strongly agree. Adequate education is a right of all people. Interesting. What is adequate education? As a student, hopefully graduating from school and going to university, I cannot think that I will need all of my subjects, even though I must pick them for my program, for my final year's program. I don't think I will need them all in university for my current career. So as such, I wouldn't really call my education adequate, even though it's, well, top degree. And secondly, I do not think people, well, let me put it that way. When you are born, just by itself, you, as an individual, do not have any rights. In fact, even when you're conceived, you do not have any rights. The government under which you are born bestows you with the rights that are acceptable within the government. And as such, per very governments, per very societies, those rights will vary. It goes also back to what exactly is adequate education. In some places, 4 years is adequate. In some 10 years is adequate, in some probably 20 years with diploma, PhD, etc. may still be considered inadequate. So I'm going to disagree. This statement is very vague and I don't agree with the idea behind it. The means of production should belong to the workers who use them. I disagree. If you work in a factory and you have workers who assemble cars and a person who oversees the production of cars and distributes them, who do you think is going to do a better job at distributing the final product? That being cars. The workers make the cars. They did not get education on how to distribute them. The person who distributes cars, on the other hand, will suck at a conveyor belt, but will be exceedingly good at distributing the cars around. So no, I think the idea of the mighty proletariat is an attractive idea, but in the end a failing one. Specializing the labor has many advantages, one of which being that one group does one thing, the other group does another thing, and in the end they achieve much higher output than people who try to do all the things at the same time. So strongly disagree. United Nations should be abolished. I think that if it's abolished, it splits all the countries in its isolated sectors. My opinion in here is very much based on the fantasy movies and fiction movies, where you have those big one world, one galaxy, one whatever organizations. And I tend to think that it is much better when, if on Earth we worked as one country, as one planet. It is much easier to allocate resources, much faster to make the projects, etc. Working in isolationism in separate countries wastes more resources, as each country will have to do the same thing by itself, and so forth and so on. It stalls progress. That being said, the United Nations recently has been rather questionable. We see many people criticizing it, but because we are yet to see those that criticize it to fully implement something of their own, I'm going to be neutral on these statements. I don't think the United Nations should be abolished just because it made a few mistakes. Yes, those mistakes are large, don't get me wrong, for many people, but completely abolishing it means that it'll be very hard to make a new coalition, and as such, I consider absence of new coalition really bad. Military intervention is often necessary to protect the nation. On a condition that the nation is attacked, I agree. Because an act of aggression, you cannot just peacefully go over it. Because if you do, if you make yourself neutral, you will just get captured. Or if the person is honorable, they will avoid you. But the problem is, if I really want to capture this country, and the country says, no, I'm neutral, I'm going to say, well, screw that, I'm going to capture you. And I think in such a case, if you're threatened, you must respond with military intervention by either protecting yourself or making a preemptive strike. Nothing wrong with that. It is more important to retain peaceful relations than to further our strength. Well, if you further your strength, then most likely you can't really have peaceful relations, because peaceful relations implies absence of necessity to furthering the strength, though this statement is a bit self-contradictory. In general, if it asks, well, let's simplify it. I want peace or do I want war? Well, no, of course I want peace. Let's complexify it a bit. Would I rather try to work for peace, or would I rather be prepared for some bastard to backstab me? I would say that if there is a risk, yes, I would be rather safe than sorry. So I'm going to disagree on this one, but let it be known that I would much rather pertain a peaceful route. But if I see... Oh, oops. That wasn't supposed to be in the list. You never saw anything. But I would rather much follow the peaceful route, but if there is a necessity for me to be strong, I will be strong. Wars do not need to be justified to other countries if those countries have nothing to do with the war, if their interests in any shape or form aren't affected. So, for example, their ally is attacked, they have a factory, or their residents are in the country that is being attacked, they are being attacked. In those cases, you must justify it. In other cases, you should not. So I'm going to agree. Military spending is a waste of money. This goes back to the statement about the strength or peace. If there is a problem that requires me to go for strength, military spending is not a waste of money. It's a very conditional thing. So I'm going to be neutral on this because it varies from the situation. International aid is a waste of money. Not really. A bit of a side information. When I was doing the paramedics course, we talked about the law of good Samaritan. One of those being that if you're not required to help and people do not want your help, you should not help. Literally, you will be arrested if you do help. So if the international aid is sent and people say we do not want it, it's a waste of money. That being said, it's a bit of a small condition, so I'm going to majorly disagree, but that condition still stays. My nation is the best in the world. Unfortunately, no, but I would like it to be the best in the world. That was a simple one. Research should be conducted on an international scale. Well, like I said, back to the One Earth government. If all people unite to work in a single project, it is done faster, more efficiently. A bit of an interesting point here is that should we distribute the rewards of research based on the amount of contributions, or as long as you contribute, you just, well, get the spoils? Because if you do the latter, there will be many free writers who will just tug in there to get knowledge and not contribute much. But on the other hand, if you will distribute knowledge based on the participation, then not much point in making international scale research now, is it? So I'm going to agree, but let's keep that in mind. Governments should be accountable to the international community. Oh, it's the same thing as I said back in the responsibility before other countries. If international community is involved, yes. Other than that, no. Even when protesting an authoritarian government, violence is not acceptable. I agree. I really despise the events of French Revolution or the Bolshevik Revolution when people decided that they should oppose the totalitarian governments that were terrorizing the population, oppressing it, doing terrible, unspeakable things to it, and so they rose. And once they rose, they created their own states, and they repressed and oppressed the population, those that disagreed with them. Like, seriously, what's the point of a turnover if all you achieve is just a mildly different form? The problem with violence is that it's always an extreme solution, and it always backfires on you in literally and figuratively, that usually people who do violence are dealt with in violent means. Let's look at French Revolution. Jacobins started the blood wheel of terror and ended up falling under the said wheel of terror. Bolshevik Revolution, Bolsheviks took control of the Russia, and then Mr. Stalin was kind enough to purge a vast majority of them. And in the literal sense, it backfires because usually things fall back and then they are slowly reformed. Like with French Revolution, they toppled the empire to create a republic, and then Mr. Bonaparte came along and just gave a huge middle finger to those people who tried. And then later they got, even though they got the parliament, they still got the king back for a while. So yes, they got some achievements, but it kind of got reversed back a lot. Same with Russia. They toppled the monarchy to create a republic. Mr. Stalin gave a middle finger to that idea and created a totalitarian state, and eventually later it got reversed back to a parliament and with a president. But once again, it also backfires a little bit, so I'm going to agree. It always must be done in slow steps, considering the future. My religion should be spread by force if necessary. I don't have a particular religion, so no, I believe in a higher power, but not in any particular way, so that's an easy question. If we generalize and say religion should be spread by force if necessary, well, here's the thing. If I oppose it, if religion is spread in one way or another, it unifies the people. Frankly, agreed, not in a way that many would like. Definitely not those who do not like the spreading religion. But it kind of unifies the people. It kind of creates the idea of a one world government, in a way. On the other hand, if I accept to it, spreading by force means violence and death. And when you have death, you lose human resource, you use industry, you lose many things. So I'm going to say that I disagree with the part by force. It should always be peaceful, but in the end, it kind of unifies people in one way or another, so that's kind of good. My political ideology should be spread by force if necessary. Okay, same thing in here. Exactly the same as religion. Law and order should be maintained at all costs. Well, a bit of a devil's advocate here. It is my belief that the nature of human society and general life is evolution, adaptation. As such, the meaning of life then is then change and progress. While not fully correct, law and order stands for stability and usually lack of change. So if you maintain law and order, you kind of keep the population in control, it's stable. But if you keep it in the same way, you stall progress, or when the progress comes, you suppress it. And as such, the law and order does more bad than it does good in the long run. So what I'm going to say is the following. As long as law and order adapts, and, frankly, in most of the cases they do, by violence or peaceful means, usually I would prefer peaceful, but the maintaining of such law and order is then a priority, as long as they do not stall the development of society. Political elites are necessary as the general populace makes bad decisions. Oh, so true, too true, so true it hurts. Shit memes aside, humans, I believe, are very individual creatures. We're selfish, we go for our own goods. And if we go by our own goods, we will not really care about a community as much as we will care about ourselves. And as such, this will mean that some force must be there to either make sure that we care or at least make sure that we contribute to the community. Because if we don't contribute to the community, whatever it is, a state, family, literally anything, if we don't, we cease to exist as species, because the species is a community and we must contribute to a community. So yes, I think that political elites are necessary because it's a way of making sure that we continue to exist, that we contribute to each other. A victimless... what the... victimless crime. It's a paradox. Such as drug use? A victimless crime? Oh, really? Okay, the person who takes drugs is a victim because they damage their own body. It's a self-inflicted damage, yes, but still. And usually, the crime is because they've been harmed by outside force that offers them drugs, even though they go by themselves. They're still taking it from a party. They're taking it so quite often because they don't know how harmful it is, and even if they do, they still take it. So, what the hell is a victimless crime? It's non-existent. Crime implies a harmed party and a harming party. Even if it is yourself that you inflict harm upon, it's still a crime. And if the drug use is legal, then, well, once again, it's a crime. And if you break the law, then once again, it's a crime. You can cry all you want about that you do not agree with it, it still remains a law. So yes, completely disagree. Terrorism is a major threat. Well, a threat is a threat as long as you maintain the idea that it is a threat. But sometimes there are also some real threats, but the social threats remain threats as long as the society believes in them being threats. And some civil liberties must be sacrificed to prevent it. Well, an interesting one. Let's put it this way. Terrorism is all about taking away the social liberties of others, causing harm to others, taking away their feeling of security. If you sacrifice civil liberties, won't you end up doing exactly the same thing that terrorism does? In specifics, you will do different things. In the end, you will achieve different ends, most likely. But I mean, in general, the thing is kind of, well, it's the same kettle of fish, so to say. So I'm going to say that I disagree. If you sacrifice civil liberties, you kind of achieve the idea of terrorism, in a sense. Government surveillance is necessary in the modern world. Well, here's the thing. I've heard many people saying conspiracy theories about government control and yada yada yada. Here's the thing. How would a government know what its populace wants? The best way to do it is surveillance. And if you're scared of surveillance, the question is why? If I have done nothing wrong, I have nothing to fear, I have nothing to hide. The counter-argument, of course, to this is that the event that you have done or partook in can be taken out of context and put in a different context, and then it will be framed you as guilty. But the surveillance implies that it won't happen because the government will know everything about you, and as such, you won't be able to decontextualize a situation because it will be completely monitored. So I say that yes, if you do total surveillance, then do it. If you do half-assed surveillance, if you do just partial surveillance, don't at all. It's more harm. Either do it completely or don't do it at all. The very existence of the state is a threat to our liberty. It's like the what was it? Decriminalized crime. Well, about the drug use. No, as why it's said, when you are conceived or born, you have exactly zero rights. It is up to the state to bestow the rights upon you. So no, the very existence of the state is not a threat to your liberty. The very existence of the state assures your liberty. Okay, that's a very fun one. I might be missing something here. Can someone please tell me in the comments? Because I see no issue with it whatsoever. Regardless of political opinions, it is important to side with your country. Yes, I think it's a very good point, because you're a citizen of the country, you may question the current rule, but if you abstract the said rule from its decisions, you will just add to the more chaos. There are better ways to help your country, to suggest other plans, to help the president if you think that the ruling party does something bad. Simply by, going against your country because you do not something in the political opinions of the current rule is destructive, it's chaotic, it's a waste of time and energy. Strongly agree. No authority should be left unquestioned. A very important specific if needed in time. Because if we are on a military field and I start questioning my commander, what do you think is going to happen? Most likely, very bad things to me, my command, the people who are around me. So I think that eventually, yes, you have absolutely every right, and I think you should, to not question, but rather analyze the decisions of the authority. But you should not question it every certain time. Sometimes you first comply, then ask questions. In stressful situations where you must first act, then ask, such as military decisions or some important I want to say stakeholders, stakeholding actions where you need to make quick transactions really effectively. You don't have time or privilege to question the decisions. You must first do it, and after this you will ask, so why did you do it? So I think that's a very big if in the statement. But generally, yes, I agree. A strongly hierarchical state is most efficient. Have we ever not had a not hierarchical state? Or even a community? I think every single instance of human history was hierarchical in one way or another. Today we have, a democracy where people rule. There are still people, there is still government, there is still a hierarchy, even though it's smaller. So I think that I cannot really compare a hierarchical state to anything else. And usually the stronger the hierarchy, the easier it is to maintain control and order. And I have specified already that I would prefer to have control, law, and order, albeit adaptable. I would still like it, so strongly agree. It is important that the government follows the majority opinion, even if it is wrong. Well, the government mostly is based on the decisions of the majority. For example, in the democratic elections, you win if the majority goes for you. So I think you don't, as a government, it will be really hard to not follow the majority, because your existence of a government kind of depends on that majority. So I'm going to agree. Now, secondly, of course, if the wrong, who determines whether or not the opinion is wrong? An opinion is, after all, a very subjective matter. Let's take Brexit. The majority of Britain wanted for Brexit to occur. So as such, they would view an opinion. So as such, the majority opinion of Britain was for Brexit. The EU, however, was, let's say, against it. And the majority of their views was that against Brexit. Now tell me, who of those two organizations is in the right or in the wrong? Ask a person for Brexit, they will tell you. Ask a person against Brexit, they will tell you. As such, the wrong majority opinion is a very subjective thing to speak of. So I'm going to say that I agree. The stronger the leadership, the better. Yes, the same argument I had for the hierarchical system. The more organized it, the stronger it is, the better. Of course, you also must make sure that in your chain of command, the people who you command are not completely incompetent fools. But I think leadership kind of implies that. Democracy is intrinsically valuable as more than a decision-making process. So, I'm not so sure what this statement means. Does it mean that as long as you have democracy, democracy must be pertained, not just because it's a decision making process, just because it's called democracy. No, 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 no. I don't think so. If a democracy is harmful to a society in any way, shape, or form, you should not pertain democracy. You should make sure to advance your society. After all, societal structures and governmental structures are very much interchangeable. Today, you would consider democracy to be the best thing ever. Tomorrow, you would say that, a dictatorship would serve well. And in different times of history, both forms of government and every form of government in between and beyond are very much useful. So, no, I'm not going to cling to democracy just because it is democracy. If the democracy is failing, you shouldn't cling to it. Environmental regulations are essential. I assume that means that you want to make sure that we are sustainable and we care about the climate change. My opinion on the climate change is as follows. We did not create it and we barely enhanced it. There is nothing wrong with exploiting our homeworld. It is nothing good in exploiting our homeworld. It is how we go around. We, as species, use the resources available to us. And if that means interfering with the climate change of our planet, then so be it, as long as our race advances. So I do not think that those regulations are essential if they go against the progress, and more often than not, they do. A better world will come from automation, science, and technology. In general, I will agree with this statement because the more we advance, the more we can do. However, I would like to point out that there is something called a structural unemployment. The type of unemployment that happens when the jobs people are doing are being replaced by machines or the jobs are out of date. So technically speaking, automation and technology will improve the world, but many people can potentially suffer a lot because they no longer will be needed. On the other hand, if the people are no longer needed, then they can just sit back and enjoy the luxuries, theoretically speaking. So I'm going to agree, but once, as I said, the structural unemployment is very much a thing that must be accounted for in the market. Children should be educated in religious or traditional values. Now that's an interesting. It makes it sound as if they shouldn't be, because I mean you can agree or disagree. Here's the thing: religion was and in some places is very much part of education and government. And some governments, in fact, all of the governments I can name out of my head from being the Western Europe are based on religion. Thou shalt not kill. Murder is illegal. Thou shalt not steal. Theft is legal. Of course, adapted over time as any societal structure, but still. And I would argue that during my time in religious classes, what was more important for me, not the religion itself, but the lessons it offered in the lifestyle and the life choices to be considerate to others, to make sure that you look after yourself very well, to achieve success, to not do things to others you would not wish to be done upon yourself, to be analytical of the situations. It's the same as with general education. It's not that I will take all of the facts and data I received during my school times or even university times. It's the skills I learned or applied during those times that I most likely will cherish. So I think I'm going to agree. Religion and tradition can offer many, many good skills to use and to learn and to improve. As such as education. Meow, that was my cat. Irrational traditions should be abolished. Well, that goes back to the idea of wrong and right. Who is to determine a tradition to be irrational? The people who follow it? Then they wouldn't follow it. The people who do not follow the tradition? Well, they're not the ones following it. There is no such thing as an irrational tradition. Everything can be subjectively rational and irrational in the eyesight of different individuals. So, well, in a situation where the majority in a government wants to abolish a tradition, I think it could work. But then in a democratic society with a freedom of expression, abolishing a tradition kind of goes against the values of democracy now, doesn't it? So I'm going to disagree. Mostly because I do not think that there is such thing as truly irrational, to each to his own, as they say. And abolishing it often does more bad than it does good. Religion should play a role in government. Well, religion did play a role in government. To a certain extent, there are some religious parties in different governments, so I do not see a reason why it shouldn't. After all, I did put an example of thou shalt not kill, murder is illegal. Religion did play a big role in the formation of governments. Maybe it is no longer required in some governments. Maybe some governments will still need it to fully form and maybe go past religion. Maybe a religion will forever remain part of some other governments. I don't think why it shouldn't be. Churches should not be exempt from taxes. Well, do churches contribute to the market? Do they own enterprises? Do they sell products? Do they produce some type of goods? If yes, absolutely. It's just that I didn't hear that much about such a thing. Climate change is either not real or not man-made. Oh, well, climate change is real, as in the Earth has cyclical changes in temperature, the ice age, the warming. If anything, there was a time in medieval ages, around 11th century, when the average temperature in Europe was much warmer than it is right now. So climate change is definitely real. But is it man-made? Hell no. Is it man-enhanced? Barely. So I'm going to say I disagree, but not completely agree. It is important that we work as a united world to combat climate change. No, as I said, it is not good or bad to exploit our planet. It is what we do. It is what we do to advance further. If we do not work with our planet, if we do not evolve and adapt and stop climate change that will not be favorable to us, we won't be able to advance. Strongly disagree. Society was better many years ago than it is now. Oh, the dreams of in my old days, kids were better. Sorry, that was a wrong example. Back in the old days, people lived much better than they do now. No, completely wrong. A society was not better, it wasn't worse. It was different. The values and traditions were different. The norms were different. If a person from a society from 500 years ago is to jump forward in the time to these days, the society wouldn't suit this person. Likewise, if we had to jump 500 years back in time into the societies of this time, we wouldn't find them good either. It wasn't bad, it wasn't good, it just was suitable to those people. And right now, our society is suitable to us. So, completely disagree. What's next? It is important that we stay connected to our past. Yes, I agree, past is a good way to provide us knowledge and wisdom, to make sure we don't do the same thing over and over again, to make sure we learn from our mistakes. It is important that we think in the long term beyond our lifespans. Yes, once again, I agree, if we only think about ourselves, as tempting as it may sound, we won't be able to advance our civilization. Reason is more important than maintaining our culture. What? Culture is unreasonable? Bullshit. If it was unreasonable, society is based on culture. Spoiler, every society wouldn't survive up until now. Cultures are reasonable, they are based on rules and regulation. They are essentially the epitome of reason, so completely disagree. That was a strange statement. Drug use should be legalized or decriminalized. For scientific or medical purposes, yes. For entertainment, I have the same stance on drug as alcohol or cigarettes. No, it is bad. Here's my argument, though. It is a bit of a crazy argument, but bear with me. I think the reason we are attracted to alcohol and cigarettes and drugs is because they are harmful, because they are prohibited. We like them because they are bad, and because we're told not to stay from them. It's this argument of a child being told not to touch the box of chocolates. The child will touch it because the moment you make something taboo, especially if it was not taboo for a while, you will crave it more than anything else you have ever desired. As such, yes, I think that it should be legalized, because if you remove the taboo, you will solve the problem. So yeah, agree. And you will help to forward the medical advances. same-sex marriage should be legal. I don't really care. Biologically speaking, I only see heterosexual relationships as beneficial. But if people desire to be engaged in same-sex marriage, I see no problem whatsoever. But once again, I kind of oppose it, but I would not mind other people doing it, so I'm gonna be neutral on this one. Sex outside marriage is immoral. Well, marriage is based mostly on trust. Sex outside marriage, if it's not agreed upon, implies lack of trust. So yes, it is in this context immoral. Abortion should be prohibited. Oy vey. I'm actually not having much of an opinion on this one. I honestly don't. Well, those are unwanted cases. There are cases. Well, okay, let's put it this way. I value life among most of the things. The most things I will cherish is life of other person. As such, in abstract terms, taking a life away in my book is bad. Completely bad. So I'm going to say that I disagree, but actually no, I'm going to stay neutral, because even though I think that the life is sacred and should not be taken, and the life is the most valuable resource you can possibly have, there are cases where the child is unwanted, and when you couldn't have done anything to have stopped it. That being said, there are means of contraception that are being more and more available to other people, both males and females. So I think I'm going to disagree. Abortion should not be prohibited. Gun ownership should be prohibited for those without a valid reason. Well, let's not go into specifics of what a valid reason is. We're just going to assume a valid reason is a reason to have a gun. Yes, I agree. You shouldn't have a gun just because you want just because you can have a gun. If a situation says that you can have a gun, and mind you, in my mind, a valid reason is the law of constitution, threat to your life, or is there other option? Well, not really. You either are allowed by law, or your life is being threatened, and nothing can protect you other than guns. Those are valid reasons. Other than that, I don't think, so I'm going to strongly agree. I support single payer universal health care. Well, here's the thing. Governmental or public charities cover quantity. Private charities cover quality. So actually, no, it doesn't ask it. It asks whether or not I support it. Yes, I support it. I think if you have a universal healthcare for everyone, it's going to be good. The only problem with the universal healthcare is what the hell it covers, because, well, I mean, you can pay a ton of money for the universal healthcare because everybody must have it and not everybody can pay for it. But what will it cover and how much will you lose? So in this case, I would say that I would much rather prefer to pay for my own healthcare. And the more money, oh yeah, I even said it, the more money I have, the better healthcare I should get. So yeah, I disagree. I think we should all be responsible for our own healthcares. Or if other people need healthcare, it is the job of the government to use their tax resource to provide for them. We shouldn't be taking it from our own budget. That being said, the tax can be increased. I support the European Union. Yes, I support the idea of unification of the whole world under one government. I believe it is vitally important to function as a whole one group. It is much more beneficial in every single way I can possibly imagine. But that being said, the European Union, I think, is kind of failing because people are clearly displeased over it. And as such, I support the idea, but not the realization. So I'm going to disagree on this one. Communism isn't as bad as people say it is. Well, let's put it this way. Russia tried it. China tried it. Cuba tried it. A few other places have tried various types of communism. Okay, let's put it this way. Ideally, communism is about caring for community, whereas capitalism is caring for yourself. And ideally, communism sounds much better, because caring for community means you provide for many people. That means when people get to live, that means civilization goes on. But humans, as I said, by nature, are selfish creatures. That is why communism has never worked, and most likely will not work in a long period of time. So what I'm going to say is, communism is not bad, it is not good. It is an ideology, it can be used both ways. And genuinely, I think it is more beneficial than capitalism. That being said, communism won't work right now, because we're a capitalist-based world. We work on money, we work on private interest, we work on ourselves, we're selfish. We cannot work in communism, not because communism is bad or because we are bad, because simply communism does not work for us. So I'm going to disagree. Fascism isn't as bad as people say it is. Well, that's an interesting question. Fascism, what is it? Far-right ideology. Well, it goes about nationalism. It's an okay. I'm not too sure about this, but I think that fascism is an extreme form of nationalism. I oppose isolation of countries. I oppose the single governments. I prefer the global world. And as such, fascism goes in a position of that, if it is what I think it is, which is extreme nationalism. And I'm going to say that no, fascism to me is bad. Capitalism isn't as bad as people say it is. Well, I have said already that communism and capitalism, they're not good or bad. They are ways to live by. And right now we're a capitalist species, so to say. So as such, it's my neutral position, capitalism. Right now, it functions. Right now, it works. Does it have flaws? Yes. Does it have pluses? Yes. So, neutral. All people, cultures, worldviews, genders, sexualities, and economic classes should be... No. Again, should be read equally. We are not born with rights. We are bestowed rights upon by governments. I know it's gonna sound very terrible to some people, but that's what I think it is. If you are born in, let's say... Okay, instance, you are born in Japan, you are born in the United States of America. Most likely you will be having different traditions and different laws, different communities. It's not good, it's not bad, it's how the things currently are. And the thing is that right now, not every single ideology, not every single community can coexist with each other. Sometimes, even though I personally do not like it, separation is needed, which means that not every single law will be applied to every single individual on the same basis. It will really depend on the place you live in. It will really depend on the circumstances. And as such, no, people shouldn't be treated equally if the place they're in does not legally treat them, have an obligation to treat them legally. So disagree. And last question. It is important that we further our ethnic, cultural, or economic group's goals above all others. I would rather go for scientific and technological, but let me think. Ethnicity, culturalism, well, economics is nice. Cultures, yeah, cultures are societies. Societies are the way we function. We are society. Ethnicity, it kind of goes under culture. They're intertwined. I wouldn't make those three my priority, so I'm going to say neutral. Alright, let's see our results. Economic axis, we're centrist. Holy shit, that's not as close as Brexit, but close enough. Diplomatic axis, okay, that's a bit further. So I'm more for might than for peace. Statist, ooh, I'm very much for authority, not much for liberty. Jesus Christ, don't kill me. And I'm not neutral really. Societal axis neutral, so I'm more for tradition than I'm for progress. Oh, that's sad. Well, I thought that was more a progressive person, but hey. So closest match is centrist. Ideological matching is a work of progress and is much less accurate than the values and axis. You can send... Oh wait, that's not the description. I thought it's description. And what's that? Oh, that's the same thing we did. Well, that was it. I thank you all for being a part of this mess. If you have something to comment, please comment. Did you like my opinions? Do you think they're right? Do you think they're wrong? Please. I think it's time to put a disclaimer in the end of the video that in no way does those opinions tell people what to do. It is merely my opinion. For out of 7 billion people, I'm pretty sure that 7 billion people will have 7 billion different viewpoints based on those diagrams. So if you think that in some ways I maybe am factually incorrect, please tell me. I would love to hear that feedback. If you think that my viewpoint doesn't comply with yours, also feel free to tell me. I would love to hear what other people think about this. If you think that I'm right, please tell me that I'm not alone and we can form together a new form of government and topple the world. Just kidding. Well, see you next time and have a nice day. And pause.